Hey everyone, it's Professor Lim, and welcome to Module 4 of ITP 220. It's a big module, and you're going to learn a lot, and I'm kind of excited to tackle JavaFX. So, to help get you oriented, make sure you take a look at this. I posted a Java GUI developer tool glossary in Canvas under Module 4. And it has a lot of definitions that might not make sense at first, but as you follow the walkthroughs, you'll start to know what some of this means. Um, Perhaps the easiest place to start is with this distinction between frameworks and libraries. So we've been using libraries like JDBC is a library, and in this module, we actually get to start using frameworks. And the way I've heard it described in the most memorable way is so in libraries, you are calling um, standard library methods in your code, whereas in frameworks are a little more complex, and they've taken care of a lot of boilerplate code for you. And so the phrase is, you don't call us, we call you. And we've actually been doing this already with JUnit. Anytime we create a test method, a unit test in JUnit, it calls your methods rather than initializing JUnit. It goes the other way around. JUnit takes care of initializing your code and calling your methods for you. So JavaFX is a framework in that same level. The trick with frameworks is they can be more complicated to set up, and we often need to use a build tool, or we want to use a build tool to automate some of these processes for us. Otherwise, it can just get really complex. So we are going to be using a build tool called Maven. Hopefully, maybe you've heard about it before. It's very popular. It's completely open source. There's other build tools out there. The older one is called Ant, and the newer one is called Gradle, which I've seen used a lot in Android development. But Maven is probably still the most popular and dominant build tool. Another word for it is a dependency manager, or some people just call it a project manager. So Maven creates a project setup for you and handles downloading libraries, and it creates a scheme of directories so that developers know where they should put their source code as opposed to, say, image files or other resources. And this is probably one of the most important um, concepts from Maven. Maven uses a pom.xml file to organize everything. So all your projects, dependencies, um, version numbers, like what version of Java, what version of JavaFX we're going to be using, all of that is declared in a pom.xml file. It's a project object model, not unlike, say, HTML or XML. And then what a build tool does is it produces an artifact. And this is a set of files, often executable, produced as a result of the build process. So sometimes you'll see people distribute their applications in the form of a single jar file. And that's actually a runnable jar file that you can just double click on and run the whole GUI application. That would be an example of an artifact that's produced as the result of a build tool like Maven, and how Maven's able to just bundle everything together, including Java and JFX, into one executable application file. So yeah, this is really important stuff. And after you work through the content this week, you'll be able to do some pretty exciting things. So just want to show you the two programs you're going to be working on. The first is through the walkthrough document that will be on the assignment page, and this is the first thing you should be going through. So the first thing I'm going to have you do, and I'll probably make this due a little earlier, is this document, Module 4, Install Maven, JavaFX, and Scene Builder. So there's 4 parts to this for each of these components, and you'll just go through this document and take screenshots of various steps. So this says take a screenshot of step 15. That is from this website. So you'll be using this tutorial to install Maven on your system, and in that tutorial there'll be a step 15. And sometimes I'll mention that I'll try to mention anytime there's a difference. Like when you follow this tutorial, you'll notice that it uses an older version of Maven, so I try to note things like that. And lastly, if you are using Mac OS, you may want to contact me sooner rather than later, because all of these instructions I've built are for Windows. I'm not aware of any students on Mac OS, but definitely let me know, because we'll have to revise these instructions. Or if you're up for a challenge, you can do that yourself. It shouldn't be too hard to redo these instructions for Mac OS. So that's the first part of your module, going through this document, taking all of these screenshots. And by the end of this document, you'll have one working JavaFX program called Welcome Demo. And I'll show you what that looks like. This is another thing to be aware of. We can't use run as Java application for Maven projects. Instead, we're going to click Maven build each time we want to run our application. And we have to enter 2 goals. Clean deletes the previous build artifacts from any previous time you've run your program, so it's always good to include that. And then the other command you'll just want to memorize is JavaFX run. This is a plugin that is declared in our pom.xml file. It's a Maven's JavaFX plugin, so it handles compiling and building GUI projects. Then click Apply, and to run your application, just click Run. And you'll see these messages on the console, and all of that is usually just behind the scenes. Developers may use this for troubleshooting, but this stuff may go to like log files or something like that. It just shows you what's happening as Maven builds your project. So you want to have this window. You're going to take a screenshot of this in the walkthrough document, and then one of your assignments will be to you can actually build out this application in the scrapbooking assignment. There'll be more instructions about that assignment in Canvas on the assignment page. So you can just build this welcome demo into that scrapbook program, or you're free to create a new Maven project for that scrapbooking assignment. And then the other program is the tip calculator program. So again, we can do the same thing here. And I just want to give you a demonstration of what this looks like. And actually, let me show you one other thing first. So we'll be using Scene Builder to design the GUI. To open Scene Builder, once you have it installed, you go to the Resources folder, and you have to drill down until you find this fxml file. And then you right-click that fxml file, and then go to Open with Scene Builder, which will open this guy. So you can use this graphical designer editor to add components to. So here's kind of the document object model, and you can drag and drop controls from here. I'm sure there's a way we can expand that. Anyway, oh, there we go. So yeah, this is how you can build a GUI application in Scene Builder. You start with a layout container, and we're using a grid pane layout container for the tip calculator. And then all of these controls within each grid cell come from this control section, including like the slider right here is this element. So Scene Builder is really cool, really helpful. It would be way too much to try to, code all of this. So you can actually, look at properties for each element in your GUI over here under the Properties tab, Layout tab, Controls, height, spacing, padding, and code. This will be helpful. This code panel is helpful for, say, the button. So like, for example, we can click on the button here, and to register a method that handles when the event of a button being clicked, you'll actually just type in the method name here in the onAction field, give the control an ID, and then you can use these values. This is a variable name, this is a method name, and you'll use those values in your source code to handle what happens with the button click event. And the Didal textbook goes into that in a lot more depth. But one thing to note here is you can get a preview. I mean, I think this is a pretty good preview of the application in itself. You can also do show preview here, but none of the functionality works if you use this preview element. To actually see the working functionality, you want to always save your changes in Scene Builder. Then you can just close it and run the program in Maven. So we'll do that again. Type clean JavaFX run. Apply run. And this is the start program that you'll have. So you can see the slider works, and based on the slider you can calculate the tip. So that's all this application does. The only field that you can edit and input anything here is the amount field. But the slider will recalculate the tip amount and the total bill based on what you put in that input field. So this is an introduction to Java GUIs using JavaFX. I think you'll really get a lot out of this module. And in the rest of this video, I will go through setting up the tip calculator program, but it's completely optional. You can just follow along the Didal textbook if you prefer to code everything that way. So the rest of this video, feel free to skip or skim. Again, you'll have two assignments for customization. One will be the scrapbooking assignment, and then the second assignment will be adding some features to the tip calculator program, namely adding tax rate and the option to split the bill among multiple people. So dividing the total bill by the number of people in a group and showing what the amount would be per person. Feel free to do it on your own following the textbook if you prefer, but I wanted to provide a video orientation, especially since there's so much new tools and technology this module. So anytime we need to create a new GUI JavaFX program, we're going to do it through the Maven archetypes. So I'll click Maven project here. If you don't have this, you can also click project and then find, you don't want to actually use these JavaFX templates, but go to Maven and then click Maven project. That's all fine. This is the archetype screen, and we are using fxml, so I'll just search for that and make sure to pick this version by Open JFX. For artifact ID, you can name your project whatever you'd like, but something like tip calculator probably makes the most sense. For this second program, I think I'm going to just call it tip calc. And I always change the version number to 123. You will need to update or make sure when you're editing the pom.xml file, you'll need to know these values to update it. And unselect that. You don't need to mess with these, although you can, but you don't need to because you're just copying and pasting over the auto-generated pom.xml file anyway. So click Finish. And then you're going to want to grab this Word document and copy everything. And so there's 3 places we'll need to update the red text. So I'll remember those. Let's drill down into the pom.xml. Oh, and I always prefer to open this with just a text editor. It's easier to edit. So I will select all and paste my file over this. And then the first thing, if you forget to do this, you'll get a lot of errors in subsequent steps. So our artifact ID, tip calc, the version number's right. I tried to select the most recent versions of everything. And then here's the last part we need to update. So this will be tip calc. Go ahead and save that file. Right click the project, find the Maven menu, and select Update Project. Or you can just do Alt F5. The defaults here are fine. And let's go to Build. And we're going to need to enter these goals. If these goals ever disappear, you'll just want to do the same thing again. Right click and go to Maven Build and enter clean JavaFX run. Let's apply and give that a try. Actually, let's see. Yeah, that should work okay. Great. So we have a working JavaFX application. And now it gets a little tricky because we need to delete all those files and replace them with what we want. So I'll delete these 2. You never want to delete this module info file. I'll open app.java and I will just copy it from the Word document again. I don't want to forget this last bracket. So the main problem here is these two fields need to be updated. We're going to have to create a tip calculator.fxml file, and we're going to want to change this to tip calculator. This is the window title. And then, so let's work on the fxml files now. Under resources. And I'm just going to delete both of these. And what I'm going to do is actually provide you with a starter fxml file. Scene Builder doesn't integrate well with Maven, so this is the best workaround. What you can do is just right click on this folder and click new file right here, just a blank generic file, and let's name it tip calculator fxml, and I will provide you this starter code. This just gives you the one parent grid pane, which is a layout container, and will be our root node for the main scene. So let's save everything. And sometimes you don't have to do it always, but if for some reason you try to run your project and you get some errors, you might just want to remember that since we're dealing with Maven, if you make major changes, it doesn't hurt to like clean the build, which deletes your previous target outputs. So sometimes this is a good troubleshooting step, and then after you click Maven clean, you can either rebuild it or run as Java application. So let me just, I was noticing that sometimes when I run it as Java application, it was losing the Maven goals. Let me show you what that might look like. I think it's going to happen. Yeah. So this means it's not saving those Maven goals. So we can't do the Java run as. I'll have to, I'm going to make a note of that for you all. But so instead, to run your JavaFX project, instead of selecting Java application, just select Maven build and always type clean JavaFX run. So this is just how we'll run our GUI programs. It seems to be the only bug-free way of doing it. Alright, so we have a good starter screen here. This is one empty grid pane. If we want to start editing that, we'll right-click the fxml file and open with Scene Builder. Yeah, I've been noticing that. Let's see. Okay, there it goes. So once you select it, you get those rows and columns like we want according to the textbook. So I'm actually going to open the textbook and start working through it. It looks like first thing we can do is we'll need to add some rows. I guess we'll do that. I'll add the rows and then I'll use the scene builder to drag in the controls. Let's try that. So I'm going to select here, right click, and click add row above or below, doesn't really matter. Alright, and then to find our controls, we'll go to this box and we need 4 labels. seeing if we can type on it immediately. You can select the text. That's probably the easiest way. Or you could find a text property over here. Just click enter. This is going to be a dynamically generated field. So it doesn't really matter what's in here currently, but I will just put a percent symbol for now. And since we're on this control, we want to give it an ID because this is going to be a control that's dynamic that we edit programmatically so that it shows what percentage of tip we'd like to give. And we'll come over here to properties. This is the text field I was mentioning. And we're looking for ID. Let's see. It's in the code window. Okay, it's in this window. Alright, so we need to write tip percentage label. And this is going to be, this value here for FXID has to match up with the variable names that we'll use in our code to work programmatically with these controls. So we will be seeing this name again. Let's get the last labels in here. Total. And now we want some text edit fields. And these all need ID values, so we'll do that too. This is going to be amount text field. This is going to be tip text field. Excuse me. And this is going to be total text field. Then we need a slider, horizontal slider, that we will call tip percentage slider. And a generic button. And I forget what we want to name this. So I will just call it, oh actually, yeah, we might not even need a name, but I will call it calc button. Yeah, this is where we're going to put the event handler code eventually, but we're not quite ready for that. We could though go ahead and edit the text of that button, either by double clicking it or finding the text property field here. Text is going to be calculate. Okay. So now the textbook goes through resizing things, and it wants us to select the grid pane over here in the document window and change the width and height properties to their defaults. So do this. Okay. Now we're supposed to right align column 0. Set H alignment to right. And now it looks like we want to, while we're on this column, select pref width, set that to use computed, and do the same for this column. Nice. Okay. And then we'll select the button. Under layout, set max width to max value. Okay. And it says we should preview it. Show preview in window. Okay, well that's a nice preview feature that you don't even have to run the app. You can get a demonstration that way. So I'll just close that. Then we need to work on the padding between these elements. So we're going to select the entire grid pane. And I think we're going to edit these values. So all these should be 14. And H gap should be 8. And we don't need to change the vertical gap. So we can just keep that the same. And then it recommends changing let's make sure we got the right field. So we're going to change the tip text field. It's actually this one. We're going to change this tip text field and the next one. So shift, I selected both of them. And we're going to go to the properties section, uncheck editable. Oh, there it is. And focus traversable. We also want to uncheck. Now we're supposed to configure the slider. So we can set the minimum to 0. The max will be 30. The block increment is going to be 5. Then we'll give us a save. and preview it again. Okay. We'll come back to this. Doesn't seem like Didal mentions anything about it up front. But that's okay, let's continue. Okay, so we need to specify a controller class. Expand the Scene Builder's document window, controller section, located below hierarchy. And we're going to, there's actually a few different ways to do this. But we need to enter this first. Tip calculator control. And then it wants us to go back to the button, go to that in the code section, and on action we are going to eventually create a method called calculate button pressed. Then it recommends creating a skeleton file for the controller. We're going to show sample controller selection and copying all this. Now I think we need to put this in I'm going to save before I close Scene Builder. So if you click refresh there, you can see all the changes we just made in code. All of this is new that we just created. So a lot easier than trying to type out all this code manually. But I think we're going to want to create our controller class here. So we will call this tip calculator controller. And now we can paste all that code we just copied. And then Didal goes into a lot of explanations, but looks like we're going to stay here. And what do we need to do first? Okay, so we gotta get some imports to handle and a number formatter to handle the money. It looks like he does that right here. And we're going to be using the big decimal class. Good choice, since we're dealing with money. I'll find some resources for you all on that. And we need to import it. And these are all of our controls. I like that comment. And it discusses the fxml notation. So that ensures all of these fields are matched correctly with the GUI component in the fxml file. So these instance variables, you could think of them as matched or attached, directly to those components, those controls we just added through the scene builder. And as we noticed before, the variable names here have to match the fxid values we used. So then we want to go ahead and create an event handler for the button. So the code for this is provided in Didle. You can skip ahead if you want to just type it out yourself from the textbook. So this is interesting because it does assume, when the user presses the button, that this field, amount text field, has text in it. And if it doesn't have valid numbers, it's going to throw some sort of exception. So that might be something we want to fix later. This is how, so big decimal can't use operators. We have to call methods instead of using like asterisks. We use the multiply method. Oops. And we're going to use our number formatter. Format a double. And do the same thing for the total text field. Almost done. Just need our catch block now. Okay, so let's see. We need to register the event handler. That looks like Scene Builder did that for us. Title just explains this code, but we're going to want to override an initialize method within this class. So Didal recommends setting all rounding operations for the number formatter to half up. This is really just for presentation though. And then to get the slider working dynamically, we need to create our own custom event handler. And we do that by calling the add listener method on the tip slider. So our tip slider is called tip percentage slider, I think. Yeah. And we need to get the value property, which represents the numeric value of the slider. And we're going to add an event listener. This one. And then Didal has a nice discussion of anonymous inner classes, and yeah, this is something we see all the time in GUI code. So let's create that anonymous class. This is an event listener. We can actually, so we need to this is, I think we want to do this, import change listener. And I find that a bit surprising, but I'm going to do it. Now it should say, add. So the event listener has one abstract method we need to override. And basically we just need to say tip percentage equals big decimal and we're going to, here's where we can change the label beside the slider. Using the percent formatter. The only thing I did run into one slight bug that I needed to warn you all about. So let me open Scene Builder again, and we can do that by right-clicking, go to Open Scene Builder. And the issue was with this controller class. I had just put in tip calculator controller, but since we're using Maven, there's a bit of a more complex project setup. So we actually need to use the full class path here. Otherwise, your application won't launch and you'll get a bunch of confusing error messages like I did. So type in your full the full package path here, edu.vwcc. Whatever your package name is, and then the title of your controller, tip calculator controller, and just click save. And you can double check that you typed it in correctly here in the fxml file, or you can actually just edit it here if you'd prefer to, instead of at Scene Builder. This is the value it's looking for. So because of how Maven separates resources from the source code, that's why there's this bug and we have to change the code a little bit. But otherwise, I actually like how Maven separates the resource files out from the source code. So we could have put the controller class here with the fxml file, but in general, that's just not considered as clean of an organization as having both files here in the source folder for the Java files. So just to show you that everything works and the button and slider all work if you just follow along in the Didle textbook, I'll give this a run. And I've been noticing that I can't run it as Java application because it loses the Maven goals. So every time I've been running it, I just select Maven build and type in clean JavaFX run, apply, and then run. All right, so let's put in $100. And let's move this. You can see the integer range is working. Let's leave a big tip. And notice you can't type in anything in here, but you can click calculate. And we see that the tip is correctly calculated automatically. Again, you can't even delete these. These are because these text fields are unfocusable. So let's do one more test. 15%. And calculate. Perfect. So this is the end of our orientation walkthrough. I hope this helped, and you'll have to continue to build out this tip calculator program in the module homework for this week. You're going to need to add a tax field and also a feature that will split the bill based on the number of people. So you'll have another field for number of people too, and then you can calculate the total for each person that they owe to cover the group bill. And that should get us through Module 4. Well done, everybody. Thanks so much.